Welcome, everyone. This is Kristen McHarg. I am here today on our Love Insight live stream, and I am hosting a very special friend of mine today as we cover the topic, Are you feeling stuck? And she's going to give us some great ideas for when we're kind of mired in the muck in our lives. And I think we all know what it's like. But Kat, let me tell you a little about her. She's an amazing woman. She is a 500-hour certified yoga teacher. She leads yoga teacher trainings. She is not only that, she is an Emmy nominated director and producer. So she's worked in film and obviously very talented. I first met her when I owned the yoga center in Telluride and brought her in as a teacher, and she really blew my mind. Her energy is incredible. She's a very bright light, and I'm super excited to have her on today. She's also been studying deeply nonviolent communication. She's actually a facilitator of this style of communication, which takes you far in life, and it can help us so much in love and relationships. So I'm excited about that. And most recently, she's been studying with a man named Gabor Mate, who is a trauma-informed somatic therapist. And so, yeah, so much of the challenges that we have in relationships are born from past traumas, and the triggers and all of that stuff. So she is well informed, and I'm so excited to have her on today. So let's bring her on. Welcome, Kat.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful. And we are tackling a tough topic today, the topic of feeling stuck. And I know that can really kind of be it's a broad topic, to say the least, because stuckness can really manifest in so many ways, shapes, and forms. So today, I think you said you will be sharing with us your 3 C's for dealing with or tackling stuckness and kind of finding ways to shimmy our way out of it or make peace with it or whatever it is. I guess that's what we're going to be talking about today. So welcome.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, getting stuck, feeling stuck. I know that so well. And what are the ways to get unstuck? And so, yes, there are 3 C's that I wanted to share with you today. One is curiosity, one is communication, and one is compassionate self-care. We'll get into those. But I first want to point out in my trainings, especially nonviolent communication, it is an approach to looking at the world through a needs-based awareness. So conflict is usually in the strategies to get needs met, and it's going deeper, excavating deeper by being able to identify feelings and needs and shifting the conversation that might seem conflictual to one of connection. Not only like conflict with others, but with ourselves. I have a lot of inner conflict. So getting stuck, feeling stuck. So first of all, it's a perception. I feel stuck. We say feeling, but it isn't necessarily a feeling. The question is, what do I feel when I feel stuck? Usually I feel frustrated, which is a form of anger. I feel scared, right? So there's some fear. And I also might feel like a sense of overwhelm. And in the trauma informed type of therapy that I've been learning, when I'm in a state of overwhelm, I am immobilized, and feeling stuck is like I'm stuck. I can't move. And there's a lot of stuff that comes up with that. So the first thing is being curious, like, okay, when I feel stuck, what am I feeling? What is going on? What is coming up for me? Not like there's something wrong because I make stuckness wrong. It's more like, well, what is that for me? And is this a familiar feeling? And if so, how far back does that go? And it often is something that is in the past that is getting stimulated and triggered in this moment that is old. And so being able to, as you said, like sit with it and befriend it and maybe make peace with it and understand that that feeling stuck got me very far in my life. It helped me survive. The question is am I operating on classic 9 when my OS system really should be in 10? So there's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I just want to add to that. It's interesting because here we are talking about feeling stuck. And I think generally when we come up to a place in our lives where we feel stuck, we're usually looking outward at life circumstances. And what you're saying is that it's not so much the circumstances as the feeling inside that may be creating what we're experiencing on the outside. Is that correct?
Well, it's both, because what I'm experiencing on the inside is going to affect how I interpret what's happening. Mm-hmm. But also the outside is a stimulation of something that already exists within me. And therefore, when I am in a situation where I'm frustrated and feeling stuck, and it's not the situation is just pointing like a red flag, enter here. Mm-hmm. And that to me is so much more interesting to do the excavation inside, because I have agency with that. I can't control things around me. I can't control people around me. If you know how to do it, please let me know. It would make life so much easier, right? But what if whatever's going on is allowing me, that stuckness is actually, it's not an obstacle, but an opportunity. And I know that sounds all like, oh, that sounds really great, because when you're in it, you're like, let me get out of here. Right. Mm-hmm. So part of it is sitting in it, but also like being curious about it. Like, what is that for me? What is coming up for me? Mm-hmm. So that leads me to the second C, which is compassion, this concept of having compassion, self-compassion. And in that, there's this self-care practice, which is, first of all, I can beat myself up. I do it all the time. The way I speak to myself sometimes is very different than how I talk to another person, but I seem to be okay because I'm unsupervised and no one has to know.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't work for me anymore. I want to be nice to myself, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm not taking care of myself and have self-care practices, how do I expect anyone else to take care of me? Or how do I expect anyone to treat me a certain way if I'm treating myself poorly? Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, there's that. And again, it's harder to do that. Like giving yourself compassion or empathy is like giving yourself a haircut. It's kind of hard. We need to have these mirrors back of people around us. Mm-hmm. So part of my self-care practice has been not just, having a nice bubble bath and sort of having space and my meditation and my yoga, but also creating stronger boundaries or limits about what I'm willing to put up with, what I'm not. And when I'm in situations that really aren't working for me, to be able to identify, this isn't working for me. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, that's the thing. I'm so well trained and conditioned to go, there must be something wrong. I have to fix it. I have to do something about it. I'm such a doer, and I'm like, yep, give me. So the stuckness is like, what do I do with this? How do I get out of it? Mm-hmm. And instead, what if I can just be with it and be curious about it and have compassion for it? Because it's a part of me that's trying to express an unmet need.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I can look.
So I'm just going to slow you down because you've just covered so much, and it's like, wow, my mind is reeling, spinning out. I'm catching little bits and pieces, and I'm really, it's a rich conversation, what you're saying. I mean, you talked about kind of turning inward, dealing with the feeling, also being really, well, we're being curious, right? So being aware of the self-critic. Right? Is the self-critic actually contributing to the situation, making it worse? And you were talking about needs. And so do you want to talk more about needs?
Yeah. So in nonviolent communication, which is named after ahimsa, the basic, like, ethical precept of yoga, right? No intention to harm. Because Marshall Rosenberg and one of Gandhi's grandsons, Arun, created this modality of a way to look at the world through a needs-based awareness. Now, needs are something we all share that start with shelter, food, air, water.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also needs of play, trust, um, connection, community, autonomy. I mean, there's all these different types of needs that we all share.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean like I need a relationship. That's not a need. But the relationship is a strategy to get needs met, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
can get from a relationship trust, affection, connection. I mean, there's all these things that come with a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to extricate a need from a strategy to get the need met is, first of all, very important,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we're talking about how do we this epic love, right? We all
Yeah.
need love,
Yeah.
right? And that's a need.
Mm-hmm.
It's a need,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So these strategies to get our needs met through another. I wonder if we could turn that around and start with ourselves.
Yeah. So another precept of NVC, or nonviolent communication, is that it is your job to get your needs met, no one else's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is a huge relief when I have felt like I'm supposed to meet everyone's needs and then my needs are last, which creates resentment, which I know very well.
Mm.
But it also means that no one is going to be the source of getting your needs met, right? So it's this thing where we all have equal consideration of needs, especially in relationship, in the relational field. But it's not that the other person has to meet those needs, and vice
Right.
versa.
Right.
It is our job. It is my job. And then I can come with a million different strategies. I have my favorite strategies, but
Mm-hmm.
we come up with all these different ways to get needs met. Then I have more sense again of this agency. I'm not dependent on someone to do something for me, but if they want to contribute to my needs getting met, rock on, wonderful. But it's not their job, just like it's not my job to get someone else's needs met.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is much more of an interdependent type of relationship, not codependent or independent. It's like something where almost like an intradependent, kind of concept of
Mm-hmm.
how am I relating to my needs and getting them met inside, which then brings us to the communication. How am I going to communicate that? Right. But if I don't know what I'm feeling, if I don't know what I'm needing, I don't know what's going on inside with me, how am I going to communicate any of it?
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. Do I even know what's going on inside with me? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. And this is where the body to me is very important, because when you've been triggered, well, I'll speak for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have plenty of triggers. I live in New York City. There's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
When I feel triggered, when I'm experiencing a trigger, I know something has shifted in me energetically.
Mm-hmm.
My body goes into a different place in my nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, being able to listen to my body and realize, I don't know what just happened, but something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Then I say to myself, what is that? What is that?
So
Something
it's a
just happened.
feeling, a trigger that you're talking about is like actually a feeling that you, or is it like a shift you're experiencing? I mean, I think for triggers, when I think of triggers, a lot of times they happen so fast that we, as Eckhart Tolle says, we go unconscious and we don't even realize that we're triggered until after the fact, right? And then we go, wow. And I don't even think most of us realize that we go unconscious. We're not even conscious that we're unconscious, right?
We don't even know what we don't know, right? It's like breathing. It's like fish in water,
Yeah.
right? You
But
say,
as
what
we
water?
become
What are you
more
talking about?
aware of it,
Where's the
yeah,
water, right?
right. Once we start
So,
becoming aware of this, though, like you are discussing, I'm
yeah.
fascinated that so you feel a shift in your body when a trigger happens. Uh,
Something gets me and I'm like, like something
okay,
happens, right?
yeah. Oh,
Physically,
okay. Yes.
I
Yeah.
feel physical something, right? I also notice, wait a minute, because sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling until after the fact. Sometimes it's so familiar, but I've never put a name to it
Mm-hmm.
that I don't even know what to call it, except for I know this feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it is slowing down.
Mm.
It happens so quickly, right? So you have a gun and you have a trigger. The ammunition's in the gun. So whatever happens, the person that triggered you, right, triggered you. It's not that they triggered you, but the trigger went off. You own the ammunition. It's in you. That goes off, that's yours, right? Or it's mine. Speak in first person. And often we think, well, that person upset me.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that person stimulated something that was already inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Then, so the curiosity, what is that? Then it's like slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we move quickly and go into that very well-worn path of a reaction, we don't get to shift. We don't have that moment.
Then we really are stuck.
Then we
Is what
really
you're
get
saying.
stuck in this loop. Oh,
It's a
here
loop.
it goes again. How
It's
am
a
I in
loop.
this situation again?
Mhm.
Right?
So let me just try and understand, process what you're saying. So something happens, it triggers us. If we're not aware that we're being triggered, we actually are self perpetuating a pattern um, of stuckness in this particular pattern until we start to notice the shifts in our body, notice the triggers, notice the things that actually activate our fear body, if you will. Or as we started out, you talked about frustration or anger or any of those feelings when we feel powerless, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, so and this is that, I think that's a great description of being stuck, because there's so many ways we can be stuck. We can either be stuck in relationship patterns, we can be stuck in a job, we can be stuck in our lives, like in just so many different manifestations, if you will. But if you were to just take the surface off and describe it, there's kind of a way to describe it. Like I can't seem, it's sort of, in a way, it's like self-limiting beliefs too would be included in that. Like if I don't believe I'm greater than this situation, I'll never find my way out of it. And it kind of becomes my reality. Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that what came up for me when you were sort of reflecting back what I had said is that powerlessness, that feeling of powerlessness, um, I'm imagining is nothing new. I'm imagining from my experience, it's a very ancient feeling that I have experienced,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what's getting triggered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what do I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Because powerlessness is bad in
Right.
in a binary world of good, bad, right, wrong, shouldn't thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And nonviolent communication is operating outside of that. It's just like it's an energy. Whatever we feel is an energy. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to label it good or bad. It's just like, is this meeting a need or is this not meeting a need of mine?
Mm-hmm.
So the slowing down and realizing, aha, I'm in a pattern, like samskara in Sanskrit, like a groove we fall into, a default, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have them, and they're not a problem. They actually have served us, and they have gotten us very far. The question is that still helping me or not?
Yeah.
Is it a help or a hindrance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm slowing down and I notice, aha, something just came up for me. I could even say, I don't know what just happened, but something just happened inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just being able to name that is huge. The awareness is the first step. And that's, again, the hardest part, to be like, I'm a fish. I'm in water. Wow, look at the water,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's that. Then it's this space between the stimulus and the response. This space is where we choose. That's where the freedom is. And if
Mm-hmm.
we can elongate it and make it wider and broader and bigger, then we have a lot more choice to move around and figure out what to do with it. But when
So
it's so
trigger
great, no
happens,
choice.
and we look for what we want to do is create space and slow down and just kind of pull back. So one of our viewers here says, so once we realize we're being triggered, is that when we set boundaries?
Yes, that's a really great question. Thank you. I have been learning about boundaries later in life than because I wasn't raised with them. And the thing about boundaries is that they're not walls. Walls are things that protect us, but they also disconnect us, right? So boundaries, I like to think, is like a permeable membrane. And it can be brought out. It can be put, it just has a variability to it. And I like to think about boundaries as, what's my limit? Where is my limit? So I can say, you know what? I noticed that you just said something that I'm having a reaction to, and I'm not really sure how to respond to it. And I don't want to say something that I don't mean. So is it possible for us to just pause for the moment and let me just sort out what it is that I want to say, instead of just going into like the regular rote thing, right? And so I think the concept of boundaries or limits or being able to hold these things for ourselves is such an amazing empowerment tool without making the other person wrong. It's like, this is coming up for me, and I really want to be mindful that I'm not going to say something that might be hurtful because I'm noticing I'm really upset right now. I would much rather someone say that to me than, you just pissed me off. You always do this.
I think what you just touched on is one of the most powerful concepts, and one that I talk about as well a lot is instead of jumping to the conclusion that it's that person and wanting to react to that person, but what you said was just to say, whoa, I'm feeling angry. And I know I'm feeling angry and I don't want to take it out on you. So I'm just going to take a moment and then let's revisit. How's that?
I need space right now. I need just a moment. And I promise I will come back. I just need to sort this out because I want to make sure that I'm really mindful about what's going on for me.
You want to hear something entertaining? The word, that phrase that you just used, I need space, that is a trigger for my husband. And he doesn't like that. So he requests, if you're going to say I need space, because he would perceive that as there is something about him that you want to get away from, right? So that's kind of actually insinuating that he's the reason, but it's really like these triggers are personal in a way. They're just being triggered. It's our own stuff that's being triggered. We're perceiving it, to be this person that is the cause, but really it's held in our body. It's an old memory that we're responding to or reacting to. So when he says, please don't use I need space, if you want to say that, choose to say, I could use some personal time, I thought that was interesting. I was like, okay, it's just so funny how language and our perception can really turn things upside down and inside out and create a lot of just frustration and misunderstanding and hurt. But the hurt is really just already in there. So I think what you said, and this is how I started, was just acknowledging what we're feeling, right? Is one of the most powerful ways to pause and kind of remove ourselves from the trigger and take full ownership. This is my stuff.
Accountability.
Yeah,
totally. And what I'm hearing and what you're sharing is that is a trigger for him because it must go back way before you were ever
in it. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And yet, if you're aware that that's going on and he says, please say it this way, you're contributing to his need getting met, but you're not, it's not like it's your job, right? And that's really sweet that he's able to even
communicate,
verbalize that in some way, right?
It is.
And so I think that the idea of first awareness of it and being curious about what's going on for me. And then when I'm genuinely curious about another person, it's because I'm fully self-empathized. But I shouldn't like make myself, I need to, that's like shoulding That's like being judgmental to myself for being judgmental. Like, it's just like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to I'm just spinning my wheels.
Yeah.
But when I can identify what I'm feeling and what I might be needing and try it on for size and think, does this really resonate? Is this, what it is for me? Then I can communicate it from such an uncharged place or deactivated place,
Yes.
so that what is happening when we communicate is an exchange of energy. I could just be like, wah, 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 wah. And you don't know what I'm saying, but
Right.
that I'm pissed off and telling you that I'm
We feel
upset,
it.
right?
Yeah.
So it's an exchange of energy. And so when I'm able to shift my own energy, what's going on inside, and can self-regulate, then I can be in a more co-regulated space, which is a lot of things that I've been learning with therapy. And it's such an interesting, it's amazing that we don't have more communication problems, because whatever comes out of my mouth is a reflection of what's going on for me. Whatever comes out of your mouth is a reflection of what's going on for you. So if you say something to me that's triggering, it's not about me. It's actually something that's going on for you, but it's stimulating something that happens to be triggering for me. So the fact that we're able to have a communication and have clarity when there's all these conversations going on inside of you and what you say to me, conversation what's going on inside of me and what I say to you, and then conversations of how I'm interpreting what you're saying and how you're interpreting what I'm saying, is amazing that we communicate it all. There's so much complexity that I just want to name that it's amazing when we can be in that place of co-regulation and safety and really connect on an energetic level.
Do you have maybe a self-regulating technique for moments like that you can share with us? Or
I have a few. First of all, there are things that I do when I notice I'm getting agitated or something. Like, I'll hold my thumb. It somehow brings me to a place of safety. I'll hold my thumb. This is something from somatic experiencing. So something physically is helpful. Like, if I know that, like, I'm feeling, because what happens is we have a perception of safety.
I want to share this with you real quick.
Yeah.
This is a mudra. Called reassurance, where you actually take the thumb, or you take your hand, you wrap your other finger around it, and then you bring your thumb and that's
I love that.
reassurance.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Isn't that funny that came up?
It calms my nervous system.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if that's the point of the mudra, but that's my experience.
Actually, it's called Shankha Mudra. It's for inner well-being, inner nourishment, and safety. So
safety, exactly. Right. Because we have a perception of safety. We might think we're safe, but if there's something in our gut, in our cells, it's called neuroception. It's in polyvagal theory, sort of approach of the vagus nerve. If we don't have a sense of safety in our body, all bets are off. It doesn't matter what we think. Yeah. So this is something that's very tactile and physical that can then be like, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So take a thumb, ladies.
Take a thumb. Wrap it around.
I love that. It's so simple. It's so beautiful.
Simple, right?
Yeah. And then if you want to modify it into a mudra, you just bring the opposite thumb and fingers to touch. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's
it's so perfect. Thank you. Please interrupt. And also, if there's some physical posture that I know can relate myself to feeling safe, that's something I also can do in those moments. But when I'm in a situation where I can't jump out of the moving car,
right,
because that wouldn't be safe. Although I energetically have jumped out of the car, right? Sometimes I will say something like, that's really hard for me to hear right now. I'm not quite sure how to respond. And I'm not making the other person wrong. I'm just owning, something's going on for me. I'm not quite sure how to, there's that.
I love that. Talk about presence of mind to be able to say something like that. It's almost like, how can we practice to be able to say those kind of things in those moments? Because for me, that's something that I would have to really be conscious of and keep my mind, you know, towards often, like revisit, so that in those moments I could say, hey, you know, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. Can I have a little time to process, but maybe it's
The
that simple.
boundary right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a request because the other person might say no, but then you can say, well, actually it's a boundary. It's not a request, because a request, it's okay. If someone requests something of you, or if I'm requesting something of someone, but they say no, then it's a demand. But if it's okay if they say no, then it's a request on my part, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a boundary is a non-negotiable. It's like, you know what? I need to do this for myself because it's actually in benefit for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so yeah, it takes practice.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think, a lot of these things, they start and they feel so out of reach, but just this self-awareness, or just the awareness that this possibility is there, this different approach, is the beginning of building a muscle that eventually integrates into our being and just becomes who we are. So once you become aware of it, and you just keep seeking that consciousness, you become that. And I think that's encouraging.
And I just wanted to say that even though this might not happen real time, even like a day later, an hour later, a year later, going, oh, I could have da 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 da. That is great. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
So the awareness is something
the
that
aha.
takes practice, and not to beat yourself up that you weren't able to handle at that time, because how human of you.
Yeah.
How human of me, right?
Yeah.
But is an empathy muscle. It's something I wasn't raised with. It's something I've cultivated and I've learned to hone or to tone. But I call it an empathy muscle, right? I have self-empathy and then empathy for others. So, both are happening hopefully concurrently. But again, if I'm not really curious about what the other person is feeling or needing, I need more empathy. So,
right. So that was the second C, right?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
kind of relates to
Compassion.
that compassionate self-care was the second C.
Yeah.
For
Yeah. So
dealing
saying,
with
you know what, I need a moment, that's compassionate self-care. I am treating myself in a way that I want to be treated. Right. So if there's someone, and I'm just gonna say someone, but there's someone in my life that knows exactly where those buttons are and like digs and whatever. I'm also learning to say, ouch.
Ah, yeah. Simple.
I'm not making them wrong. I'm going, ouch.
Yeah, that hurts. I feel hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel hurt.
I think that's so tender to be able to say ouch, or I feel hurt, is taking self-responsibility for that moment of saying it's not your fault. Oh, that's weird. My computer just went blank, but just really saying in that moment, this is how I'm feeling. That's authenticity. That's vulnerability. That's not the kind of vulnerability that keeps you unsafe. That's the kind of vulnerability that gives you power in a powerless moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Going back to that powerlessness, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's scary for me. And to be able to speak from a place of vulnerability, and to speak for the pain, not from the pain, is very different, right? When I'm able to speak for something, not from it, totally different energy.
I love what you just said. Speak for the pain, not from the pain. I'm going to have to write that one down. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Again, this takes practice.
Yeah. Well, and then thinking of like the pain is like, well, I am not the pain.
Right.
The pain is something I'm experiencing in this moment. And therefore it's like our higher self being able to have that perspective And that creates the space that we were talking about that allows us to begin to evolve as people and in relationships. And yeah, overcome these triggers that have us caught in our past understanding of who we are, what life is to us, or where we fit into life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm classic 9 and I want to be on OS 10, right?
yeah.
But I want to give compassion to the classic 9 parts of myself because they got me far. They helped me survive. They were probably adaptive childhood mechanisms. And that is so, I want to give like kudos to the younger part of myself that didn't have a developed brain enough to know how to handle this. And that's how I got as far as I did. But then it stops working at some point. Or people just continue and are emotionally very young still as their bodies are aging. And I've been through a lot of compounded loss, a lot of heavy stuff that I've had to process and metabolize. And part of that has been, what are the things that don't work for me anymore that have worked, but I can let go of? So that the past can kind of be in the past with the appreciation, but it isn't driving the car. The past is in like the back of the carpool with the kids, but I'm driving the car, you know?
I love that analogy.
Don't make me come back there, kids, you know?
Yeah.
Right. And again, like I want to have compassion and support for these parts, even as they show up, because it's like a young kid, you know. I don't want to say what's wrong with you, you know, or exile them or just stuff it down. I want to be really welcoming to everything that comes up with curiosity.
That's so beautiful. It just, of course, sparks that Rumi poem. Being human is a guest house. Welcome all the emotions that show up at your door as though they are divine, sacred guests, you know? And I love what you're saying because it's that compassionate self-care. It's not rejecting any part of us. Saying,
yeah,
you're free to come along.
It's
You're
inclusive.
welcome here. I'll hold you and love you, but you're not running the show.
Yeah. And whenever I have these feelings or judgments, they're just, I'm not going to say just, I don't want to make it smaller than it is. They are indicators of needs being met or unmet. When I have a judgment, it's usually a need that's not met and it's coming up as a judgment for me. And when I have a feeling, if it's a feeling I like and I'm happy, then I've had some needs met. And if I feel pissed off, then the need's not met. So instead of trying to make it a good or bad thing or right and wrong, I'm just like, okay, that's the energy and a need is not getting met. I wonder what it is. Again, with the curiosity.
Wow, I feel like we've woven. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No. I just like there's so much in richness in all this that I don't mean to just be like that, but
well, I love it because I was just going to say it's as though we've woven in the 3 C's through this whole conversation: the curiosity, the compassionate self-care, and the communication. We've done a little bit of all of it. So unless you wanted to cover some of that communication, we still have a few minutes to go. And as we go into that, there is a comment here that from one of our viewers that says, I think this goes back about 10 minutes, but practice is right. No is a hard word for a people pleaser. And it's, I'm glad she brought that up because that people pleasing tendency is deeply ingrained in our psyche because we associate it with what we think makes us valuable. And it has a lot to do with this self-sacrifice, right? As long as everyone else is happy, then I'm doing my job here. And I'm the last person in line. But I remember you did say to kind of prioritize your needs yourself so that you don't show up with resentment in the long run, which tarnishes a relationship. And I think that kind of embodies what she's talking about, this people pleasing and maybe one of the ways we can start to shift that pattern of people pleasing and realizing that it's actually not serving anyone.
It's also toxic. Resentment is toxic.
And
It
yeah.
it erodes. It just undermines, right?
Mhm.
And if I might just add, like, first of all, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm not there yet, but I'm always arriving. Um, and yes, I don't want to get bupkis at the end if there are any breadcrumbs left. So I want to make sure that I'm at the table with everyone else, which is a big one because I usually, don't go there. But when I say no to something, I'm saying yes to myself. And that is a very helpful thing. Even when someone says no to you, they're saying yes to something. So being curious about, well, what's the yes and the no? Because then again, it's not a boundary. It actually is not a conversation ender. It's a beginning of a conversation. I wonder what's going on. So I like to think that there are two sides of the same coin. It's just, am I looking at the yes or looking at the no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm glad that was brought up. Yeah. And no can be a really exciting thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was doing my yoga training with Shiva Ray, she described that energy that you're talking about, the energy exchange with life or with people, as either resonant or dissonant. And it's a really good way to navigate life is continue to seek that which resonates. And when things are dissonant, take pause and recalibrate, check in, like you're saying, check in. Are my needs getting met here? Is this really good for me? Or is there something better for me? Right. And I think that's a smart way to even navigate relationships and dating,
Well,
something feels off.
yeah, I will just say that when I started communicating differently because I had more clarity, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's received in the way that I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm doing something different than what I have been doing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a little bit of a backlash,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
that's where the boundary is like, no, I have this thing. This is how I want to be treating myself. This is how I want
Mm-hmm.
to be treated. Boom. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so simple. It's just not
Mm-hmm.
easy to do if I've been conditioned to do things another way for so
Mm-hmm.
long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's hard because we don't want to disappoint people when we actually put ourselves like first. But especially in relationships, if we don't and we start to let that resentment build, that's what really like catches the masculine off guard, because they if we're stuffing our truth, our emotions, our feelings, then we keep going and he thinks that everything's going just fine, because men just really aren't attuned to the way women operate, women feeling, so they're just like, hey, if it doesn't seem to be a problem, right? So they won't perceive a problem. And if we're storing resentment, they always say that women leave the relationship first and usually catch men totally off guard. Men don't see it coming. So you're actually not serving anyone by trying to people please. And so taking care of our needs really is so important and is serving those around you in the long run so much better. And it's this muscle that we're trying to build, right? To actually change the pattern of self-sacrifice so that we can be stronger in ourselves and attract the life that we want, the partnerships that we want, the relationships that do feel good. So this conversation is so much fun, and we haven't really why don't we just touch on, we might just go for the full hour. Let's talk about the communication before we finish up. What do you think? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I mean, I think it's been kind of woven in. I come from a background where communication is really vital for me, and being a filmmaker and a storyteller. And it's my favorite way to connect. So one big question I like to think as far as gates of speech, like, is it true? Does it need to be said? when does it need to be said, and how does it need to be said? These
Mhm.
are sort of 4 things that I kind of think about when I'm going to communicate something. It's like trying to figure out first and foremost, like, and then again, this is like having a certain prowess of just figuring out, like, is something needing to be said at this time or not, right?
Mhm.
And again, is it true, right? There's a big question. Nothing's true, right? It's true for me,
Mhm.
right? So part of it is like I love to connect, and if you are going into a conversation being curious and wanting to keep that connection intact,
Mhm.
the energy will be different than wanting to go in and say your agenda and make a point. Do you want to be right? Do you want to stay connected?
Yeah.
And I think
Your
that,
choice.
yeah. And I have lots of self-righteousness of my, no, kind of, I have all that. But does it create connection or disconnection?
Mhm.
Right? Kind of saying,
Mhm.
is it resonance or is there dissonance? Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that is kind of the first sort of gate of like, does this even need to, how am I entering in energetically into this? Because
Mhm.
that will have a huge impact on how it goes,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then going through and figuring out like when and how, and all the different sort of things that would hopefully bring about a result that works for both of you, right? A strategy that works for 2 people, because we've been talking about inner communication, but being able to then bring it out into the world. And then is it something that's going to build trust and maintain more connection? Again, this takes a lot of practice, but I like to think of it as like, this is my view of the perfect relationship. Not that I have this at the moment, but I think it's possible. I meet someone, we really resonate, we laugh. It's very important. I have certain things of like what are important, but there's certain, deal breakers of
Mhm.
like, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to trigger the crap out of you. You're going to trigger the crap out of me. Let's just be real. Let's get a given. That's going to happen. What if it's an opportunity for us to turn it into a game of like, oh my God, I just got triggered. Not you just triggered me, but I got triggered. What is that for me? I don't know. And then that person can be like, well, and then kind of help me through it. And then I can help that person through it. So then it's an opportunity to not only cultivate more connection and trust, but make it playful and fun, as opposed
Mhm.
to the rolling of the eyes, the contempt, all that stuff that is just so eroding, right, over time. And can it be really playful so that the communication is, we're going to make a mess, but we can clean it up.
Yeah.
Rupture, repair, rupture, repair. There's no safety and sacredness in that being held, then it's scary. Like, I don't know if I want to say this. I'm upset. I'm afraid this might upset you, that kind of thing. Or I can just say, I have something to say, and I'm really scared about saying it right now. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to hear me knowing that. And that's a very different way to go into a conversation than, why don't you do the dishes?
Mhm.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
Always goes back to like the dishes, right?
Uh,
Something like that. So yeah, I think that the communication, if it's almost like upfront established, can we have a conversation about how we're going to have a conversation? The meta conversation before the content. That to me is so much more interesting, because then we have agreements. Then we can kind of co-create this thing that we both have agreed to, that can then change. But at least it's not like you have to do it my way or I have to do it your way. Let's create our way.
so beautiful.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's just so much richness to everything that you're saying and sharing. It actually reminds me of uh, the relationship that my husband and I have formed, and I'm so absolutely grateful for, and promote 100% for all of us, because I know it's possible. I'm watching it happen. And that's why I'm encouraging women through self-growth, through self-development, through self-understanding, and understanding men and their needs. We can have relationships that thrive. But there's a song that Beck sings, or one of his lines in his song that says, "My demons are on the phone with your demons." And it just makes me laugh because I'm like, oh yeah, we know that one. And then when you look at the attachment theory, we have opposing attachment styles. Of course, we always kind of shift, but I'm the avoidant and he's the anxious attached, right? And but we know this about each other, and so we see our default behaviors, like when we go unconscious and we start going into that behavioral pattern, and we stand for each other, we hold space for each other and lovingly, and we even have conversations where like, oh yeah, your inner child it is needing some attention, like when I withdraw, he steps towards me and he doesn't let me withdraw. He says, "You're needed here now." And it's amazing because of that avoidance kind of tendency in myself, I've spent a lot of my life just kind of isolating and running from things, bigger things, and to be able to find someone who's supportive of that and wants to see me grow beyond that is really beautiful and profound. And the anxious attachment in him, I'm actually really comfortable with just holding space, not taking it personally, letting it pass through me, and just waiting out the storm. And knowing that he has needs, because of that anxious attachment, he needs extra, that affirmation, just letting him know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you 100%. And so when we see these sort of behaviors in each other, in the people that we're around, we have to understand that, so much of this stuff is embedded in our soma, in our bodies from past. It's our nervous system that's responding, reacting to the moment. It's not necessarily you. So wow, relationship is just a spiritual thing because it causes us to grow and to see in a bigger way. And I think that's what makes it all worthwhile. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, the issues are in the tissues. Absolutely. So being able to be cognizant of how I respond typically to things is very helpful. To be like, you know what? I notice I'm doing this. Please point out to me when you see me doing this, because I really want help. I have blind spots. I can't see them. That's why they're called blind spots. Can we help each other with those, right? Yes. But not in a critical way, but in like, hey, I'm noticing something and this is kind of a tendency you do, but I know this is frustrating for you. So, can we just name it? I mean, sometimes I just have names for the various parts that show up, just so I have distance from it, but also have humor around it.
Yeah, like a certain persona that you might carry inside of you. What's her name?
Oh, JC is judgmental controller. JC's in the house. And I'm like, oh, yeah. She came in the door after me. Anyway, she's around. Like being able to joke about that is makes it, again, this whole learning how not to take things personally and to really own your own stuff is so like emotionally not only competent, but intelligent and resilient. And just because someone is a certain chronological age doesn't mean that's their emotional age, right? It's like, how can we get the emotional age sort of up to speed and then the biological age be more playful, kind of like, how can we integrate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What a powerful conversation I think we've been having today. I've really, really enjoyed it so much. And hopefully our viewers will too. And thank you to our viewer who's been with us today and commenting and contributing to the conversation. It's been wonderful having you here. And Cat, do you have any final parting words?
First of all, just thank you for instigating and connecting so we could do this, because I always enjoy our conversations regardless, especially the ones on the phone that aren't recorded have just been just as fruitful and exciting. And for, open always to feedback of things, because I'm just one voice in many, right? I'm just sharing things that have worked for me, but I'm also always open to learning new things, right?
Yeah.
And if anyone's interested in, I have a podcast that I have created since the pandemic. Of course, everyone has a podcast these days, with two other people who practice, who are facilitators of nonviolent communication. And it's called The Upside of Over. And we all started this podcast because we'd been through divorce, and we wanted to talk about the benefit of this ending as a new beginning. And so the obstacles, the challenges are actually opportunities to begin again, to begin anew, and turn it upside down and inside out, so that we really get the juice from the lemon, right? And it's a really fun conversation that we have about how to apply these skills that we have to situations, to our lives, to our relationships. Because if something is a really cool idea and it's not applied, then it's just a bunch of words. But the application, the theory, and the praxis, putting it together. Anyway, it's on wherever you get your podcasts. It's available.
Podcasts everywhere.
Yes, exactly. And always open to feedback from that as well. So
wonderful. So the upside of over. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kat. And I can only imagine
the image of it, just so you know, in case you're finding it, it's the backside of a giraffe looking backwards. So it's the back of the giraffe's head, because in nonviolent communication, the giraffe is the compassionate animal, spirit animal, because it has the largest heart proportionate to its body than any other animal. So anyway, it's something that came from nonviolent communication of Marshall Rosenberg. Just
I did not know that. That is beautiful. I love that. Wow. Well, Kat, you are a wealth of information. And I must say, I have thoroughly enjoyed all of your analogies and your fascinating, complex understanding of all of this very intricate inner workings, and being able to just verbalize it and share with us, and all of the, you're just a major resource, and it's just been an absolute joy to have you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. So that was really fun, and we'll just have to have you back again.
Yep, that would be wonderful. I can sort of, sort of talking from the front, I'm in this relationship right now, and this is what's going on. Let's interview everyone, because it's like, if we don't do it real time and making change, this is one thing. Last thing I'll just say, the time to make a change is in that moment. So if you say something one way and be like, nope, take two, that's when it actually shifts. That's when things occur. And that again takes the mindfulness of like, that's not really aligned with what I value right now. Let me say that a little better in another way. Instead of beating myself up later, which I know how to do very well. Because I think when we actually change things, it's shifting that habit, that conditioned pattern, whatever, in the moment, and then we can start to get a new groove, and then that can be the new go-to. Hopefully.
Wow.
Until that stops working, and then you get another.
So life is a bounty of opportunities to continue
absolutely
self-growth, self-discovery, and thankfully we have relationship and relationships in our lives to do this for us, with us, and that's one of the beautiful things about having each other,
and to thank the stuckness.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank
the stuckness.
Thank
the stuckness to introduce us to our blinders. Yeah.
To see what's going on.
Yeah. Spin off. Like, if the stuckness is there, you can embrace it and then see what else is possible. Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Exactly. All right.
Well, thank you. And hopefully our paths will cross in person before too long.
I hope so too. I would love to see you again soon. All right, my love.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all our listeners. Have a beautiful day, and thank you for being here for the Love Insight live stream with Cat McCarthy, our communication specialist, expert, definitely in-depth expert on somatic experiences and awareness and consciousness and love. Namaste.
Namaste.
I'm going to have you go ahead and end the stream, my dear
Okay.
friend.
I just pressed leave, correct?
Yep.
All right. Bye. Ciao, ciao. Oh, it's not letting me leave. Here we go. Exit.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.